This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Mem Gimel. And today's shir and all the learning for this month of Teves has been generously sponsored as an incredible schos Aliyas Neshama for Aryeh ben Ya'akov. B'siyata D'Shemaya, the learning the entire Chabura should bring Aryeh ben Ya'akov to higher in place in Gan Eden Shalmaila, closer to the Kisei HaKavod, and a schos for his entire family and Gans Klal Yisrael. We're holding on, Membees and Bees. Again, I apologize that these shurim have been uploading only the day of. Hopefully, within the next few days, as Hanukkah settles, we'll be able to get back ahead a day or two. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Gemara, were 6 lines from the wide lines at the 2 dots. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, Vehemis ish oy isha. Continuing the theme that we've been discussing, darshaning these psukim, the pasuk says, quotes the brisa, vehemis, and if a muad kills an ish, a man, a isha, or a woman, Amar Ravi Kiva Chima Beinze Chima Bazel Landenu. What is this coming to teach us? Asks Ravi Kiva. Im L'chayva Yala Isha Keish. If it's coming to Mechayv, that there's payments of kaifer, that if a shar kills a woman, you have to pay kaifer, just like if the shar would kill a man, and the pasuk would be telling you, Ishar Isha, Isha Isha, there's no difference between Isha Isha. Harikvar Nemar, we already know that. The pasuk says, Ki yigach shar es ish, oi es isha. So we already know that there's a payments for both man and woman. Ella, so what must the pasuk be coming to teach us? Lahakish isha leish, to equate a woman to a man. For what? Uma ish, the last narrow line of Membeis nizakav liyarshav. Af isha nizkeo liyarsheha. So too, just like by a man, what happens if he is an iftar before he collects the kaifer payment? The payment that is due to him goes, Yarshav goes to his Yarshim. So too, if a woman dies before she collects her payment as well, the payment goes to her Yarsheho. V'savar Rav Akiva asks Gemara, does Rav Akiva really hold Lo Yaris Labal? You're telling me that the payment goes to her children, which seemingly would indicate that such is the opinion that it does not go to the husband. V'atanya presented in a brayso v'yarash isa, and he inherits her. Mikan, from here, what do we learn? Shabal Yaris Ishtay Divri Rav Akiva. So we're in the world of Rav Akiva. So why in this brayso are we seeing that the children yarshin the mother? Really, the husband she yarshin the mother? Explains the Gemara, Amar Reish Lakish on the second wide line, Loy Amar Ella B'Kaifer. This halacha was only said with regard to kaifer, meaning, yes, it is true, like you suggested, that Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that the husband inherits his wife. But with regard to kaifer particularly, the halacha changes. Why? Hayal vein mishalim ella la'achar misa. Since kaifer is a payment that is only paid after she dies, therefore, v'havelei roi, it's considered something roi, something that is fitting to come to her and to her estate. And therefore, ve'ein habal noitel beroi kibimusik. Yes, the husband does indeed inherit his wife. However, that which is roi, that which is fitting to come to the husband, that he does not inherit. And therefore, because the payments of kaifer is only after she is nifteres, therefore it goes to the kids and not to her husband. Says the Gemara, Mai Taima, where do we know this din that the payments of kaifer only come after death? Amar Cross, says the pasuk, Isha Hashar Yisakel V'gam Ba'elav Yumas. And from this pasuk we the pasuk continues, Im kaifer Yushas Alav. When the kaifer is assessed, just like the shar is liable and put to death, at what point? Only after the death of the victim, after the woman who was killed dies, so too that's when the payment of kaifer is as well. Says the Gemara, Ben Nizakin lo Amar. Rav Akiva, does Rav Akiva not say this din also by Nizakin? Meaning you just told me that this is din specifically by kaifer. Ask the Gemara, does Rav Akiva not say this din by damages? The Tanya learned in a brayso, hika esa isha v'yatzu yilodeha. If a woman is hit and she has a miscarriage, unfortunately, noisein. What is the halacha? The person that hit her has to pay nezek v'tzar leisha u'dmei v'ladais lebal. The payments of damages and pain go to the woman, and the payments of the v'ladais go to the husband. Ein habal noisein liyarshiv. If there is no husband, he's no longer, then it goes to her yarshim. Ein ha'isha, noisan is liyarshel. If she's not around, then it goes to her yarshim. Continues the brayso, ha'isa shevcha v'nishtachra. If this woman that got injured was a maidservant, and then subsequently she was freed, says the Gemara on the top of Mem Gimel Amid Aleph, Oy Giyaires, or in the event that she was a Giyaires, and what happened, Oy Giyaires, excuse me, or she was a Giyaires, and she and her husband were both nifter before she collected the damages, Zacha. In such a scenario, then the one that did the damage acquires, and he's no one for him to pay. Says the Gemara, so what do we see? We see that in the first case, did the husband inherit the damages? The answer is no. So what do we see? We see that it's not only a din of kaifer that it's going to go to the Yarshim. There are other cases as well that go to the Yarshim. Answers the Gemara on the top line of Mem Gimel Amid Aleph Amar Rabba Begerushin. This brayso that we just quoted, in which there were other cases that the damages did indeed go to the Yarshim, is why? Is because she was divorced. V'chein Amar Rav Nachman. Similarly, Rav Nachman taught to be Gerusha, talking about a case of Gerusha, and that's the reason why it doesn't go to the husband, and rather goes to the Yarshim. Continues the Gemara, Amri, ask the Gemara, I don't understand. Grusha nami tiflag b'demei v'ladais. In the case of Grusha, her ex-husband should have a portion in demei v'ladais. Why? Just because she was a Grusha are we saying that it goes straight to the Yarshim? Amar Rabba Teiras Ascha demei v'ladais libal. The demei v'ladais is indeed goes to Lebal, the one who is the father of this child. Afilu ba'aleh biznos. Even if he was with her biznos, and therefore has nothing to do with being her husband. It's whoever is the father of this Vlad, that is where the payment for the Vladas go to, and that's the reason why he gets involved even in the scenario of Gerusha. So says the Gemara, my taimo, what's the reason that the payment for these Vladas goes to the one that fathered the children, regardless if it's her husband? Amar Kra says the Torah Kesher Yashis Alav Baal Ha'isha. Specifically, the Torah points out that the one that hit her is punished as the Baal Ha'isha caused the situation. Therefore, when the pasuk says Baal, that implies he is the one that gets the Demei V'ladais, because he is the one that is responsible for these children. Says the Gemara, 1 second, 6 lines down. V'nukma l'rabba kigon shegavu mois. Why don't we say that the Bryce is referring to, according to Rabbah, and the case is the woman died, and the Bezdin collected the cash. U'l'Rav Nachman kigon shegavu karka. What does this mean? Now it explains the Gemara, the Amar Rabbah, Gavu karka yeshloi, Gavu mois ein loi. Shitas Rabbah. For Rav Nachman Amar Gavu Mois Yishloi. Kava Karka Ein Loi. So says the Gemara, we could have explained the Brisa in such a fashion. Answers the Gemara, no, Amri Hani Mili B'nei Ma'arav, Aliv D'Rabbanan, Ki Kamri Hacha, Ke Rebbe. Rabba and Rav Nachman were only going in the scenario of Ma'arav and Eretz Yisrael, according to the Rabbanan, who are of the opinion that when we have a chayiv, then it's considered ra'ui, and that's the reason why it does not go to the husband. We're going according to the shita of Rebbe, who says that even when there's a chayiv, even when there's a potential payment that has to be made, it is not considered ra'ui, and rather it's considered as if the one that was nifter already got paid, and therefore would not go straight, and therefore would potentially be able to go to the husband. And we continue, we're at the two dots, about 12, 15 lines down into Mem Gimel and Aleph, and we go back to the next halacha that we discussed after Kaifer, which is Shleishim Shel Eved. Amar Rav Shimon ben Laki Shar Sheimis as Eved Shalei B'Kavana Pater Mishleishim Shkalim. A special halacha we've learned that when a shar kills an Eved, the owner has to pay Shleishim Shel Eved. He has to pay the 30 shekel to the owner of this Eved. What comes along Reish Lakish, and Reish Lakish says, if it was Shaloi B'Kavana, then you do not have to pay the Shleishim Shkalim. Shenemar, where did we learn this from? And again, I apologize for the video issues. We're really trying to figure out how to mitigate the lip sync problem. Shenemar, says the pasuk, Kesef Shleishim Shakal Yitin Ladoinav Vashar Yisakel. And from here we darshan, it says Vishakich goes Mancha Shar Biskila Habaylim Mishalmin Shleishim Shkalim Ein Ashar Biskila. Then Ein Habaylim Mishalmin Shleishim Shkalim. The din of Shleishim Shkalim, says the Brisa, explaining the Shita of Reish Lakish, is intrinsically tied to the din of skila, and only when there is skila, which will be when it's done a bikavana, that's when there will be such a payment. However, in a scenario where there is no skila due to the fact that the killing was done not bikavana, therefore there will be no shleishim shkalim. And similarly, says the Gemara, Amar Rabba, in a very similar vein, Shar Shehemis ben Chayrin Shloi B'Kavana Pater Mei Kaifer. Says Rabba, if a shar kills a regular person, but also Shloi B'Kavana, the halacha is there's no chiyuv of Kaifer. Why? Shenemar, says the pasuk, Ashar Yisakel v'gam ba'alav yumas im Kaifer Yushas Alav. And from here we darshan calls Mancha Shar B'Skila, then Bailim Mishalmin Kaifer. And a Shar B'Skila, Ein Abailim Mishalmin Kaifer. So two almost identical halachas, one about Shleishim Shekel and one about the din of Kaifer. Asks Abaye on Rabbah, 8 lines from the bottom, Isvei Abaye. Hey me, says in a Mishnah, Hey me, Shari has blindni, Shari shall blindni. Someone says, my ox killed a person, or such and such ox. What's the halacha? Says the Brisa, is a mishalmim al bi'atzmai. Says Abaye, my laver, now referring to Kaifer. And what do we see? We see that based on the owner admitting that he has to pay, there is a chiyuv Kaifer. So even though in such a scenario there would be no chiyuv misa, says the Gemara, lo yidamim. It doesn't mean you have to pay kaifer. It means you have to pay just for damages. Ask the Gemara, 5 lines to the bottom, 1 second. Yidami ema seifa ema shari esavdi shlel plaini avdi shalani einu misham al biatzmai v'idamim. And if you tell me that you have to pay the regular monetary compensation of my loy, why don't you have to pay the shleishim shkalim? Amar le yachalna l'shenuyei lecha. I can answer you. Reisha damim. B'seifa kinas. The first case of the Mishnah is referring to damim. The latter, when it's talking about Shloshim shekels, talking about the kinas, and that's what you don't pay when it's from your own admission. However, says Rabbi, I could answer you that. However, miya shniya techik olay mishanin lecha. That's a forced answer. That's a dachuk, and I don't want to say that. Rather, I'll tell you, says Rabbi, I diva damim. Both the Reisha, both the Sefer are talking about damim, are talking about monetary compensation as we turn over to Mem Gilmul Amid Beis, and explains the Gemara, Miu, however, Ben Chayrin de Mishalim, Kaifer al Piatzmai. Only a Ben Chayrin pays Kaifer by himself. Vehechi Dami. Only in the first case of the Mishnah, when the person admitted to killing a person, a regular person, that's when there is a din of Kaifer. Why? Because if witnesses would come and testify that the ox killed a person, and they don't know, and they don't know if it was a case of a tam, and therefore there's no kaifer. If it's a muad, therefore there is a kaifer. V'amar mare, and what if the owner would come along and he would be the one to confirm that the muadu? What is the halacha? The mishalim kaifer al biatzma. You would pay kaifer al biatzma. However, heicha deleka edim the mishalim damin gabe heicha deleka edim the mishalim damim. If there were no edim at all, then he would pay just for damages. That's by killing a regular person. Gabi Eved. But by an Eved, where there's no din of ever paying a kinas al biatzmai, the kinas potter on the last narrow line. So what's going to be the case? Diasu Edim v'seidu bei de katel. Edim came in and testified that certain ox killed a Eved. V'lo yadi, we don't know. Itam avayim mu'avad avay. V'amar mari, and the owner comes in and he admits mu'adhu. Loi mishtalim kinas al biatzmai. Hechel delek Edim. Then loi mishtalim damim. There would be no payments for damim. Says the Gemara 1 second on the third wide line. Masiv Rav Shmuel. By Rav Yitzchak, asks Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, the Brisa says that the payments of a ben chayrim mimic that by an eved bein b'kaifer bein b'misa. So how could you differentiate? Kaifer b'eved mi'ika, says Gemara, 1 second, what's going on over there? There's no cover by eved at all. Elalav damim. Rather, the Brisa must be explaining that there's a link between the payment of kaifer and the payment of damim. So what do we see in this Brisa? We see that when there's a chiyuv to pay damim for when a regular person is killed, there's a similar chiyuv with regarding the eved, and therefore explains Rashi. And therefore, if one is a moideh, that is shar killed a regular person, what's the halacha? You have to pay damim. So therefore, it should be the same thing by eved. How can you differentiate between the two cases? Answers the Gemara, Ike di Amri. You know what I'll tell you? Who moisiv la, v'hu mefarik la. He, Rav Shmuel Bar Rav Yitzchak, asked the kasha, and he answered, Ike di Amri, Amr le Rabba. Some say it was a Rabba answered. Hachi Katani. This is how we can explain the Brisa. Kol shechayev ben chayrim b'kavana al pi edim. Anytime there is a liability to pay kaifer, that's b'kavana, only with edim kaifer. That's when there's a payment of kaifer by a regular person. Then, in a similar scenario, chayev eved kinas. Kol shechayev ben chayrim sheloi b'kavana al pi edim damim. Then chayiv eved shelo bi kavana. Then you chayiv ein eved shelo bi kavana as well. Al pi edim damin. However, in the scenario where it's only via the owner's haidah, then in such a scenario, the two cases would not be similar to each other, and therefore we have no kasha. Continues the Gemara. The Rabbah is trying to explain to us that kaifer shloishim shekel are one halacha, and on another vein there is the halacha of damim. Says the Gemara, Amrle Rabbah, in the 7th white line, Amrle Rabbah asks Amrle Rava. They said, Rava says, Ihachi, if what you're saying is accurate, Shalai bekavana b'edim nishalim damim. If it's shalai bekavana, but they're edim, there shouldn't be payments for the regular damages. So towards the Gemara, then how do you know not? Where did you get that from? If you're going to tell me it came from a Mishnah that says, we have a Gedi that's tied up next to a stack of grain, or an eved that's near the stack of grain. V'nisraf imai, and the person lit the grain on fire, and the eved, the gedi, were burnt with it. Chayiv, he's chayiv both for the gedi and for the grain. Eved kafaslai, but if the eved was tied up, ugedi samachlai v'nisraf imai potter, then he's potter for the grain. Why? The simple reason is because of the rule of Kimlei B'diravaminei. The reason being that since you're going to be chayiv for the fact that you killed the Eved, therefore you can be potter from Tashlumim. Says the Gemara, so what's the kasha? When it comes to the Gedi, that we can understand. Why? Because the Gedi should have ran away. But what's the reason you're potter for the Eved if it's tied up? Says the Gemara, according to Rava, must be that the Chiyav Tashlumim only applies where there is Shleishim Shekel. But in a case where there's no Shleishim Shekel, why not? Because the killing didn't happen via one's shar, but rather via one's fire. He lit the grain on fire. Then there is no kinas in such a scenario. So the Gemara here is not really getting involved in Kimlei B'dirabinei. That's really, we had this similar discussion of Chav Beis, but here we're going within the Etzem Chiv. Says the Gemara, Amrei Shlakish, Kigon Shehetz is Begufay Shaleve. No, you know what the case is? That he said fire to the actual slave's body. That's why there's no key of Tashlumim, the Kimlei B'dirabinei, meaning the Gemara is saying you can't avoid that there is a Chiyav Misa in this case. Says Gemara v'lahamid anya, from that which learned in a brayso chaymer b'eish mi babar. That is a chumra v'eish over bar sheish me'atis lachol midavar rayula midavar shein rayula. Fire consumes everything. Mashein kein b'bar, a bar does not. Ve'ilu sheish b'shalem b'shalom b'kavana damim. And when it comes to the chumra, that eish pays for damages that were done shaloi b'kavana, mashenkin bebar, which a bar does, loy katani. The Brisa does not list that. So clearly, there is no such chilik. Says Gemara, what do you mean? Tell Matana v'shayir, and he left off this case of shaloi b'kavana. Ela Rava gufei bayimi bayile. Says the Gemara, so Rava himself wasn't asking on Rabba. Rather, he was clearing the shayla. I mean, he's not saying to Rabba you're wrong, because it's not explicit in the Brisa. Rather, he's wondering, what's the status of one's fire without kavana? Mishalim damim? Oiloi. Is there payments of damim or not? What's the shayla? Mi amrinan, do we say Gabi sharu de bekavana mishalim kaifer, shlo bekavana mishalim damim, avalation de bekavana lo mishalim kaifer, shlo bekavana naim lo mishalim damim. Maybe it's only didn't by shar, but since by eish bekavana there's no kaifer, shlo bekavana there be no damim. Oidama kivin de gabi shay roy shlo bekavana aval gavs the like a kaifer, but there still is. You don't pay kaifer shlo bekavana, but you still have to pay damim. Gabi esha nami aval gav de kavana lo mishalim kaifer, shlo bekavana miyos mishalim damim v'lo yadinan. Says the Gemara, good kasha teiku, and we'll go one more small piece of Gemara, which the Gemara comes back to the dinam of kaifer. Shalai bekavana ki asa ravdimi amar Rav Yechanan kaifer mai tamud loimer. What does the Torah mean im kaifer? Says the pasuk. The rabbis kaifer shalai bekavana ki kaifer bekavana. Says Rav Dimi in the name of Rav Yechanan, kaifer will have the same status whether there is kavana or not. Amr le Abaye, 13 lines to the bottom. The first line is Amr le as Abaye lemiata evenami matam lemer im eved. We say the same thing. The rabbis have shlo bekavana kev bekavana. V'chidei machanami. Maybe you tell me, yeah, it's true. And eved shlo bekavana is the same din. Amr reish lakish shar shemis is eved shlo bekavana pater milshalim mishleishim shkalim. That if a shark kills a person bekavana, it's pater. Amr le kavra gava karamis yaskistira and people. That's not a kasha. It's true. Reish Lakish says he's pater, but maybe Rav Yechanan says he's chayif. And concludes the Gemara, Kias Rav Yechanan Eved Matam Aloymar Im Eved. Says the Rav Yechanan Rabbis Eved Shlo B'Kavana Keved B'Kavana. Yul Reish Lakish Nami name him David Im Eved. Lo Yidarish. Lakish doesn't darshin that pasuk of Eved Im Eved. Kaifer Im Kaifer Nami Lo Yidarish. So maybe Reish Lakish also does darshin Im Kaifer. Amri, lo yaved im eved lo darish, kaifer im kaifer darish. Says Mar, why? Because like ksiv b'makav tashlumim, kaifer im kaifer, ksiv b'makav tashlumim. So the fundamental difference, that's where Rish Lakish will darish in one and not the other. Pick it up from B'chein b'benu b'bas the next year of Siyata Dishmaya.